All right, hello, and welcome to the fourth installment of this little video series. I'm Dr. Welty, and on this video, we're going to talk about intervals. Intervals are absolutely necessary for us to understand the relationships between notes, and then in the next video, how intervals can be stacked to make chords. So, let's start here. What are the notes in the musical alphabet, the Western musical alphabet? Well, I'm going to type them out here. Let's start with A, the beginning of our alphabet. So we know we have A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and then it begins again. Okay, pretty simple. Now, you may already be familiar with this idea, and that's great. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to give us a little extra space in order to add something necessary here. So as I separate these a little bit, we'll start to understand something about these relationships amongst these notes. And we're not going to go much past this spot, so I'm not going to extend the alphabet out too much because we can see that it repeats, right? It would repeat if it was going to the left also. So these are the basic letters of our musical system. We're going to add some more nuance in a second, but just to capitalize again on what I just said, this series of letters could theoretically go on for infinity in either direction, where the low frequencies would move closer and closer and closer to zero infinitely, and then the high frequencies would just expand and just up, right? So let's think about this as being flexible, right? So I've left these spaces in between the notes. Why? You've probably guessed, because I'm going to represent the notes that are in between them. So I'm going to do my best to do this with kind of a two-type system here. So many of the notes in our system have another note that's in between them. These are like the white and black keys on a keyboard. If you have access to a piano or a keyboard, you'll notice there's a recurring pattern of white keys and black keys, where you'll have 2 black keys and 3 white keys, and then 4 white keys and 3 black keys, and that pattern keeps repeating. I've done my best to arrange these letters to help us see some of these relationships, but nonetheless. So, as we're talking about intervals, we have to talk about flats and sharps. So, a sharp, I'm going to represent this on another line of text here. Sharp means going up in pitch by 1/2 step. What's a half step? Well, if we were looking at a keyboard, if we had a keyboard in front of us, a half step would be the shortest distance from one key to another, whether it's a white key to a black key or a white key to another white key that are right next to each other with no black key in the middle. This, in particular, a sharp means we're going up to that next half step. The other thing you can remember too is that if we're thinking about a half step, we're thinking about the Jaws theme, that da-da, 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 then the shark is coming, right? That interval, da-da, is a half step. And it's like we're going sharp. We're going da-da, up to that. Okay, pretty simple. If we have a flat, and I'm just going to represent this as a lowercase b, that's kind of what it looks like, equals going down in pitch by 1/2 step. And it capitalized it. Don't do that. Okay. So, if we were to go up from A, right, we would have A sharp. Make this a little smaller because we're going to need room for something else. But wait a minute, let's keep going with this idea. Okay, so let's go on to C. I'm going to duplicate these to make them the same size. C what? You guessed it, C sharp. C sharp, no problem. Okay. D sharp. Yeah. Do you notice I've been skipping some of these? F. I'll explain in a second. Guess what my next one is here. G sharp. And if we go past A, we would just get another A sharp again, right? Notice how I have skipped over B and E for these sharps. I've also tried to position them a little closer to one another so that you can see, well, if you go look at a keyboard, if you thought about this note as being C, the beginning of 3 white keys with 2 black keys in the middle, I need to get a keyboard on this thing so I can represent that. Maybe I'll add something to this video at the end. Anyway, so if you have 3 white keys and the 2 keys in the middle, the one that's furthest, the white key furthest to the left of that configuration is C. And you go down 2 white keys and you're at A. B and C have no black key in between. They're right there. Same with E and F. There's no black key in between. So in our system, we don't put a sharp or a flat in between them. Keep in mind that B sharp does exist. It certainly exists. For all intended purposes, for now, at these beginning stages, we're going to imagine it sounding the same as C for right now in our most basic approach to this. There's so much more to talk about and so much more nuance to it than that, but this is fine for now. So B sharp does exist, but people call it that under very particular circumstances. Okay, anyway, so what if, like we've imagined going up from A and increasing some of these notes by a half step going up, but what about some of these notes going down? Well, let's start here. Let's start at this end, this A over here. Well, let's think about flats. We're going down in pitch by 1/2 step. So if we were to take A and lower it by applying a flat, it would be a flat. And I'm gonna put it right next to this one, A flat. I should have made these one thing. I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna make these one thing. We're gonna combine them. G sharp / A flat. This worked out. We're gonna do it like this. So it actually worked out well that I combined them into one text thing because, well, it's the same black key. It's the same note. The fancy term for this is to say that G sharp and A flat are enharmonically equivalent. Say it with me here. Enharmonically equivalent. And so means they're going to sound the same. The same pitch in our system at this time right now. So let's keep going with this idea. G, lowering it by 1/2 step, we're going to get G flat. keep going. Now, just like I said, we weren't applying a sharp to E. We're not going to apply a flat to F. Does F flat exist? Yes, it certainly does. If you have a D flat minor chord, for some reason, for whatever reason, you have a D flat minor chord, you have to have an F flat. Period. For reasons that will be discussed later. So, in this situation, we're going to consider what is E down a half step. It's just E flat. No biggie. Let's keep going. I bet you guessed it. It's going to be D flat. And lastly, but not leastly, B flat. Okay. Pretty straightforward, yeah? I want these to be aligned. Okay, that's more like it. So, from A to A, right? This B is just to suggest that it keeps going. But from A to A, these are all the pitches. Remember that these A sharp and B flat are functionally the same note for now. And so those are all the pitches in our alphabet. Like that's it. That's it. Everything in Western music, virtually, a little asterisk, virtually everything that's part of like the mainstay repertoire is composed of these 12 notes. Are there other pitches and relationships in the world? Absolutely. Absolutely. But these are the ones that we're going to be working with for now. So, that being said, we're going to keep this in mind because this little thing is going to help us start to understand some intervals and some distances between things. I'm going to actually expand this now that I'm thinking about it just a little bit. I'm going to expand this. Stop trying to help me. Just a little bit. I'll just reorient those things. Okay, yeah, they're still fine. Just to give us a couple extra notes. Okay, now that we've got that out of the way, let's talk about the thing we came here to talk about, which is intervals. So interval is a way of discussing the distance between two notes. Intervals have two aspects, two parts to them. They have a quality and a quantity. Let's start with the quantity. So, I'm going to introduce this idea, and then we're going to apply it on the staff. But if you follow my cursor here on the screen, right, consider this. If I go from one note to another, I'm going to measure the distance starting with one and then how many notes I crossed. Let me demonstrate. So if I go from, let's say, C, I'll paint it with my finger. I'm going to draw a line. If I go from C, oops, okay. If I go from C to F, let's count it. So C to D to E to F. I drew it there with my finger. So, what is the quantity of this interval? I'm going to write this down just so we're clear. Quantity, quality. Okay. The quantity is the number. How do I say this? The number of letters we've really traversed, essentially. That'll be fine for now. The quality is going to get a little more involved than that. The quality demands that we know a little more. But for now, with quantity, we would count C as 1. The one you start with, whichever letter you start with, for now, this we're going to designate it as 1. Because then D is 2, E is 3, and F is 4. So this quantity is 4, and we would call this interval a fourth. There's more to it than that, but for now, it's a fourth. Okay, so check this out. You try it. What is the interval from D to B? And I'll do it with you. I'll give you a moment while I erase this. While I erase my work here. That was D to B. Okay, should have counted it by now. Did you count the one you started with as 1? I hope you did. Let's do it together. So we have D. Wow, nice drawing. E, F, G, A, B. That was D for 1, E for 2, F for 3, G for 4, A for 5, B for 6. It's a sixth. Okay, cool. Make sense so far? I hope so. Let's do one more. Going the other way. So I'm going to erase this again. Get the eraser. I can make this bigger. So what if we did G down to C? G down. Now when I say down, I mean going backwards in the alphabet, right? So G down to C. So I'm going to start G, and this time I'm going to count. Let's do it together. G, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's a fifth. No problem. No problem. Let's identify some more quantities in the grand staff. What do you say? Okay, so we go over here, and this is going to involve us identifying some notes. So if you're still really new at identifying notes, we're going to remember our toolkit for doing that, and remember that we said, and if you want to write this down or however you want to do this, remember the spaces in treble clef up here. We're going to start in treble clef, spell face, F-A-C-E, or every grizzly bear devours fries. We'll start there. So if I put this note I think we can see that. Yeah, okay. So I'll put it there. That note is E for every, right? It's below the F. Bottom line is E. So note's there. I'm going to duplicate it, and I'm going to place it somewhere. And we're going to figure out what the interval is. Okay. So if I switch the iPad over here and I draw, we can kind of see how we're thinking about it, right? Now, we're still interacting with our alphabet, right? Here, this will be helpful. I'll bring this up so we can keep it nearby. This is just a little reminder of our musical alphabet, in case if you're really new at this, you have this as a point of reference. Okay, so this bottom note we said was E, and maybe you already figured out the upper note. Every grizzly bear devours fries. It's a D on top here. That's a D. E to D. Now, you can think about it with your note, your note line up here, right? Let's check it both ways. Let's do it both ways. Hear me out. So let's go from the E, and for the stuff that we're doing right now, we don't need to concern ourselves with the accidentals just yet. And as a reminder, I'm covering this from the absolute basics. So, yeah, if I'm for more experienced viewers, if I'm eliding some nuance, it's to keep things simple as we go. Anyway, here we go. So E. Okay, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, so the line says it's a 7th. Let's see how we would do it in the staff and see if we get the same result. Okay, so I have the line, the note that the line is on is 1. Okay, if it were there, that'd be 2, on the line 3, in between 4, line 5, in between 6, and then lastly on the line, where the note ends, is 7. Wow, that drawing came out weird. Oh my gosh. Okay, anyway, it came out the same. It's still a 7th. What we're doing is we're counting, like we were counting the letters, we're counting the motion from a space to a line. That's one that's going forward or backwards, one letter in the alphabet. But that's like our basic counting mechanism. Let's do it one more time just to be double sure. So, let me get rid of this drawing here, and let me rearrange these notes in some fashion. What if we had... Yeah, we'll do these. Okay. What are those notes? I always start reading from the bottom. I think that'll be helpful for you as well when you're analyzing chords and harmonies, is to start describing things from the bottom for reasons that we'll talk about in another video. But bottom note is an A. Think about the spaces. Face, right? Therefore, we also know what the top space is. It's an E. Okay? So we could go up here and we could count through our thing here, but let's just use the staff and see what we get. Here we go. You can do it with me. This is 1. The line is 2. Space is 3. Line is 4. Space is 5. That's a 5th. There you go. That's a 5th. It would still be a 5th if we started at the E and went down to the A. Still a 5th. Okay, I hope that makes sense so far. Now, let's talk about the quality of these intervals. Actually, no, before I do that, I overlooked one thing I need to talk about. Going back here, this is quick, this is easy. What if I have this as an interval? What is that distance? Well, we already know that bottom line's an E, top line's an E. They're both E's, but they're not the same note. Well, let's count it. Let's do it. So count, we're going to start with 1, 1, 2, 3, that's the line, space 4. Line 5, space 6. Line 7, space 8. It's 8. It's an octave, is what we call it. Octave. So that's literally the definition. 8 like an octopus, right? Yeah. So octaves are the same note just higher or lower, right? We can have an octave down, an octave higher. And so octaves are going to be very important to us. One more thing. So if I go over here and I delete this, let's now, let's get a little crazy. I'm gonna move this down and move this up. Okay, I move this E down to D. It's in the space. There's no ledger line. It's in the space below. It's a D. And I moved that E up to the line, and now it's an F for fries, all right? What's this interval? Let's count it. So, okay, our D is 1, line 2, space 3, line 4, space 5, line 6, space 7, line 8, space 9, yeah, line 10. 10? What? Dr. Welty, I thought that the notes just repeated after the octave. Look, we had A up here, A, and then the notes just repeat, right? Well, this is a thing called a compound interval. That's the fancy way of describing it. It's an interval that exceeds the octave. And this one's a tenth. What does that mean? So what people do is they will drop that upper interval, the upper note, they'll drop the upper note an octave. It's already exceeding an octave. So we're going to drop this F down to this F and then analyze that interval. We'll still keep the number 10 in our brains, number 10. But if I drop the F, the interval is now 1, line 2, space 3. It's just a third. A tenth is another way of describing a third, where one note is an octave higher. I hope that makes sense. There are situations where we have to analyze two notes that are far away from one another, and we might have to use a compound interval. Now, in certain procedures later, as we're going to see in future videos, you wouldn't say, oh my, that's a. You'd be selective about when you would say that's a tenth, or that's a 13th, or you'd be selective about those situations. When we talk about chord symbols, we will encounter situations where ninths, 11ths, and 13ths are really specific and really matter. If you're a guitar player, you've probably encountered chords like add 9 versus sus2. Well, that's a problem of a compound interval, and those do mean something different. But that's for another video. So hang with me about that. We'll get to that. So much for quantity of intervals. Discussing quality of intervals. I'll try my best to make this quick. But I need to describe some things first. So intervals come in kind of two flavors. We have the perfect intervals, and then we have the imperfect intervals. I'm going to make these two boxes. Now, this is the part of the video where unfortunately, I would love to talk about why they're called that. I would love to. I invite you to go down the rabbit hole, because if I start talking about this now, I will not stop, and this video will be like 8 hours long. So, go ask, go ask the internet and see what you find. I strongly encourage you to use resources in the library and use like Grove Dictionary, Oxford Online, things to look up those from scholarly sources. The Wikipedia's, it's okay, but you can go deeper with some of the library materials. Okay, anyway, the perfect intervals are the unison, which we didn't really talk about. It's just the same note. It's like the same note. Unison, same note. The unison, the fourth, the fifth, and the octave. This would also include a compound interval, like an 11th, or heaven forbid, a 12th. Those are compound intervals. Those are compound fourths and fifths. Those would still be perfect under this definition. So the imperfect interval is, well, it's everything else, right? So it's second, third, sixth, seventh, and then of course the compound intervals as well, which would be fine. I'll just write them fine. Ninth, 10th. Where is my mind? 16th. Where is my brain? 13th, and then nobody says 14th. No one says that, but they could if they wanted to. But no. Nobody says that. Okay, so those are the imperfect intervals, and what I mean by that is it means that they will have a quality that is major or minor or or perhaps augmented or diminished. But for now, we're only going to talk about major and minor for now. Okay, so for the perfect intervals, we don't discuss them as major or minor. I'm gonna shake my head for a while. No. They are perfect or augmented or diminished. Okay, what the heck? Okay, so what do I do with this? Okay, well, this topic will likely continue into another video because I'm starting to get a little tired. But consider this, that we can assess the major and minorness of an interval, yes, by its sound. These videos are really dealing with a lot of paper theory rather than applied and ear training and things, so just keep that in mind. But we're going to count the semitones. What's a semitone? Well, semitone's another way of saying half step. Remember these guys? Remember these guys down here, the half step? That's another way of saying half steps. Now, if you're brand new at this, and you've never done this before, I promise you, this is going to be a little bit like multiplication tables maybe when you were a kid, where it feels like you have to calculate a lot of things, but at a certain point you start to memorize them. You start to memorize the perfect squares, right? You start to memorize the multiplication problems that tend to pop up a lot, and then they're just there. That's kind of how this functions. At first, it might seem a little like, what? A little confounding, and you have to like literally kind of do some math. But the more you do this, the more intuitive it will be. I promise. I promise. Okay, so let's go analyze some semitones. Let's do it. Okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to move that up to a G, and I'm going to move this up to an F. When two notes are close like that, they're going to be offset just a little bit. Notation software does it for you, but if you're drawing on the board, you're going to offset them. And I like to offset them in this way. This doesn't help me. I like this on that side. Notice that if I stack them, it just makes a big mess. Okay, so I have F and I have G. Okay. So we know that's a second. How do I know? F is 1, G is 2. It's a second. All there is to it. But what is its quality? Well, we have to count semitones. Let's go up here and let's take a look. F to G. Now, there is a half step up to F sharp and then to G. That is 2 semitones. That's F, F sharp, right? And then G. And I'm sorry, I'm counting 3 here because I'm counting the notes, but if I count the distances, forgive me, if I count the distances, F to F sharp is 1 semitone. F sharp is G. Because in the case of semitones, I'm not counting the interval of one note to another and then counting it. With semitones specifically, I'm counting the distances. Because I want to know, between F and G, is that just a half step? Or is that 2 half steps and makes a whole step? Because the whole step is the major second. I'm going to say that again, it's really important. The whole step is the major second. Therefore, the half step is the minor second. Let's say it again. Whole step, major second. Half step, minor second. It's the smaller of the two. So that's a way that we can start to think about this, is the major form is the larger one, the minor form is the one that has been truncated, that has been made smaller, right? So let's think about, here's one. Here's what this will be fun. Let's think about, I didn't have my tea tonight. Okay, so I have F, and what's this guy up here? It's a D. It's a D. Let's count it. I'm just going to use my cursor because I'm starting to get yawny. F is 1. Line is 2. Space is 3. Line is 4. Space is 5. Line is 6. Okay. Now, this gets a little weird. What I want you to do is for now, because I'm going to continue this topic in another video because there's more I want to talk about, and I'm bumping up against 40 minutes on this video, but this will be a teaser for next time. So what I'm doing is I'm thinking about this as a major 6. This is a major 6. I know it's a 6, because we did the quantity, we counted it. I know that this one is major. And the way that I'm thinking about that quickly is that I already know that F to C, the one below it, well, F to C, that would be something called a perfect fifth. And the D is a whole step above the C. It's a whole step. It's like, it's a major 6. But if I went over here and I made, no, stop trying to help me. No. And I made a flat. Pretend this is a flat. Pretend with me. Pretend with me. by the way, at the risk of pointing out the obvious, I know that we say D flat, but the flat has to go on the other side of the note. It has to come first. Because if you were reading the music, it wouldn't do you any good if the flat was after the note. I know we say D flat, the flat goes first. So I took a major 6 and I made it minor. It's a minor 6 now. That's all it is. I might be dating myself as a millennial when I say this, but this is the, amongst other things, bow, wah, wah. The Smile Like You Mean It by the Killers, that synth part, bow, wah, wah. Anyway, it's a bunch of other things too. It's all over the place. So, that's how we transformed a major 6 into a minor 6. There's so much more to talk about. I am going to make a second video about this topic specifically, so I have more to say. So please tune in to the next one if you have questions about this. I'm sure you do. We'll continue this in another video. Thank you for watching. I hope this was helpful. You can always leave a question in the comments, or you can send me an email, and if you're in my class, you have that email. Yes. So long. Till next time.